Welcome to the Big Burns Bash, brought to you by the Scotch Malt Whisky Society, the world's leading whisky club. It is truly international in scale, this programme, but we are live in Glasgow. My name is Vic Galloway. I'm a society member, I'm a whisky fanatic, and I'm also a music nerd, and I am delighted to be your host. Thank you for joining us. What a show we've got for you tonight, ladies and gentlemen. Let me tell you, we have whisky, we have poetry, we have music, and we have chat. Now, I know there are so many society members tuning in and watching tonight. It's lovely to have you here. If there's anyone that's not a member of the society, you can, of course, find out what makes us the best whisky club and the most entertaining whisky society in the world by going to the website smws.com. Please get in touch with us if you're watching. We'd love to hear your comments. We'd love to see your questions and any messages that you want to get out to people around the world. We're going to be crossing over to different corners of the globe. It is very exciting. We're here, of course, to celebrate Scotland's national poet and bard, Robert Burns. Rabbie Burns, ladies and gentlemen. Let's get on with it and let's have some music. Starting with someone from the Isle of Skye. He's a Skye-based society member, he's a musician, and he's also a distiller at the Torraveg distillery on the Sound of Slate in the south of Skye. Donald Livingstone. He's going to be performing in the tasting room at Torraveg after a wee stint working in the still room, and he's going to be accompanied by Kerry Simpson of Broadford on double bass. They're playing two tracks for us, My Bonnie Mary, followed by Lassie with the Lint White Locks. Donald Livingstone, ladies and gentlemen.
Fetch to me a pint of wine and fill it in a silver tassie that I may drink before I go. A service to my bonny lassie. The boat rocks at the Beero Leaf, full out the wind blows frae the ferry. The ship rides by the Berry Claw, and I'm on leave, my bonny Mary. Gae fetch to me a pint of wine and fill it in a silver tassie that I may drink before I go. A service to my bonny lassie. The trumpets sound, the banners fly, the glittering spears are rankets ready, and shouts of war heard from afar. The battle closes dark and bloody. It's not the roar of sea on shore would mak me langer wish to tarry, nor shouts of war heard from afar. It's leaving me, my bonny Mary. Gae fetch to me a pint of wine and fill it in a silver tassie that I may drink before I go. A service to my bonny lassie. Pint of wine and fill it in a silver tassie that I may drink before I go. A service to my bonny lassie. Gae fetch to me a pint of wine and fill it in a silver tassie that I may drink before I go. A service to my bonny lassie. Gae fetch to me a pint of wine and fill it in a silver tassie that I may drink before I go. A service to my bonny lassie. lassie with the lint white locks. Bonny lassie, artless lassie, wilt thou wi' me tend to flocks? And wilt thou be my dearie, oh lassie with the lint white locks? Bonny lassie, artless lassie, wilt thou wi' me tend to flocks? And wilt thou be my dearie, oh? Now nature cleats a flowery lea, and all is young and sweet like thee. Wilt thou share his joys with me? And wilt thou be my dearie, oh? Lassie with the lint white locks, bonny lassie, artless lassie, wilt thou wi' me tend to flocks? And wilt thou be my dearie, oh? Lassie with the lint white locks, bonny lassie, artless lassie, wilt thou wi' me tend to flocks? And wilt thou be my dearie, oh? The primrose bank, the wimpling burn, the cuckoo on the milk-white thorn, the wanton lambs at rosy morn shall glad thy heart, my dearie, oh. Summer shower has chilled a drooping little flower, wheel to the breathing woodbine bower at sultry noon, my dearie, oh. As Cynthia lights were silvery, the weary shearers homeward way, through yellow waving fields we'll stray and talk o' love, my dearie, oh. Lassie with the lint white locks, bonny lassie, artless lassie, wilt thou wi' me tend to flocks? And wilt thou be my dearie, oh? Lassie with the lint white locks, bonny lassie, artless lassie, wilt thou wi' me tend to flocks? And wilt thou be my dearie, oh? And should the howling wintry blast disturb my lassie's midnight rest, I'll fold thee to my faithful breast and comfort thee, my dearie, oh. Lassie with the lint white locks, bonny lassie, artless lassie, wilt thou wi' me tend to flocks? And wilt thou be my dearie, oh? Lassie with the lint white locks, bonny lassie, artless lassie, wilt thou wi' me tend to flocks? And wilt thou be my dearie, oh?
Donald Livingston and Kerry Simpson there with a couple of Burns tracks. A wonderful way to get us started on the Big Burns Bash tonight. Hopefully you enjoyed that. Let me tell you a little bit about those two songs that you heard. First up was My Bonnie Mary, which is written about, we think, his Highland Mary, his sweetheart, and it's about leaving on a ship from the port of Leith. Of course, Burns didn't leave Leith, and he didn't go to Jamaica, and sadly, Highland Mary died at the age of only 23 years old. That was the first song, and the second song, Lassie with the Lint White Locks, referring to Jean Lorimer, who was a neighbour of Burns when he lived on the Ellisland farm in Dumfries. More about Dumfries coming up later on in the programme. Apparently they had a platonic relationship, which is unusual for Burns, shall we say. The one thing I didn't say at the beginning of the programme was slange. I have a dram on the go. It is absolutely delicious. Why don't you tell us what's in your glass? If you're getting in contact and messaging us, why not tell us what whiskey you are enjoying this evening? Okay, let's move on. Well, the Scotch Malt Whisky Society started out as a bunch of pals in Edinburgh sharing and discussing their favourite whiskies. Single cask, unchill filtered and undiluted. But, of course, word of mouth spread very quickly. Now it approaches almost its 40th birthday, which is quite incredible. 40 years, ladies and gentlemen, almost. There are 20 partner bars throughout the world. There are all sorts of branches, and we're going to be visiting lots of them tonight, including our first guests on the programme. We will be going to Canada, we will be going to Japan, we're going to the USA, we're going to China. But first up, Australia. Let's meet our branch in Australia and Matt Bailey.
Hello everyone and welcome. A big shout out and thanks to Vic Galloway, Richard Goslin, Madeline Schmoll, John McShane and the whole team that bring you your tastings. My name is Matt Bailey. I'm the National Ambassador for the Scotch Malt Whisky Society here in Australia. I'm on the other side of the world, hoping that you're enjoying your Burns supper tonight and celebrating the life and times of Robbie Burns. We celebrate Robbie Burns in Australia as well, a little bit smaller than what you might perhaps do in Scotland, but we still like to have a dinner, raise a dram, eat some haggis, neeps and tatties, all that kind of stuff, of course. Having a good whiskey to go along with it always helps, and read some poetry on the night perhaps as well. If I was celebrating Robbie Burns night with you tonight, I'd probably go for something in the juicy oak and vanilla, something very, I guess, typically good Scotch whiskey, a good flavour profile, one that's not going to polarise too many, but it's going to be a lot of fun to enjoy and I guess, you know, have a few drams of. And that for me would be something in the juicy oak and vanilla, perhaps 7.234, Appealing Apricot Jamboree, bottled exclusively for our members here in Australia in celebration of the 30th anniversary of the Australian Malt Whisky Tasting Championship, which is going ahead in March, all things going to plan. I hope you have a wonderful evening. Vic's got quite an adventure lined up for you, I believe, and have a fantastic Robbie Burns night. Slanjava.
Coming straight from Australia, isn't that wonderful? Matt Bailey there from the Australian branch of the Scotch Malt Whisky Society. This is the Big Burns Bash. I'm Vic Galloway and I am joined by star of stage and screen, performer, punk rocker, actor, supreme, esteemed in his love of Burns, a huge Burns fan, and he actually plays in a Burns punk rock crossover band called the Bum Clocks. Welcome to the Big Burns Bash, Tandine Byrne.
Thank you, Vic.
Look, let's break dry January straight away.
Yes.
I've already done it.
Aye, I've done it. And God, this is the first. Yes.
Yes, well, cheers to you, Slange.
Yes,
Slange. It's lovely stuff, isn't it?
Oh, totally lovely. Totally lovely.
So tell us a bit about your love of Burns. I mean, I assume you discovered Burns at school?
I did, and then school puts you off in loads of ways, having to stand up in front of the rest of the class and recite or that as well. It didn't sort of take to it then. But what really propelled me into it was this Burns and All That festival that used to happen down in here, led by Pete Irvin, Unique Events, and they asked me to come on the first one. I was competing with Patti Smith. She was on at Culzean Castle at the same time. But I was doing we had a drag double act called Binge and Racket that was in homage to Hinge and Bracket,
right?
For the older crowd, really, that used to be on the BBC. But we were then on every year. I was on with my wee brother, and that's where we first started this discovery, really, of how Robert Burns and Iggy Pop were really good pals.
I know, well, I'm going to get onto that in a second. But, I mean, in terms of, like, you know, standing up in front of a crowd, you're an actor, you're, a hugely successful and well-respected actor, and you've done all sorts of different things. I've seen you all over the place, obviously on TV and film, but also on stage at the National Theatre and all sorts. So getting up and standing in front of a crowd, that comes naturally.
That's why I've got these, actually. This has just happened yesterday. I'm going to be in Jekyll and Hyde, in Leith as well, at Leith Theatre.
Oh,
so
cool.
They've come up with this, doing the chops for the 19th century look.
Yeah, it looks great. Mind you, I have to say, look at your outfit today.
These were actually from a theatre show as well. These belong to John Byrne. when I was in the stage show at Tutti Frutti. I had these as the guitarist, as Vince.
I thought I'd done well with the Trues today.
Indeed.
These are, I think, Anderson Ancient tartan made for me at Stuart Christie's. Vixie made them, I'm sure you know her. Anyway, back to Burns. So you fell in love with the work and this combination of what you sort of brought together of Rabbie, Burns and Iggy Pop.
It just came so natural, and this discovery how the pair of them were really good friends. We discovered in Burns' first published poem, Twa Dogs, he's actually talking about his relationship with Iggy Pop.
Well, we're going to hear
I've got to prove that.
You're going to do Twa Dogs in a bit, aren't you?
But I am indeed, and also that where they started to mash together. And I've not got the band here, but I can do it just by myself as well.
What do you think's like what brings Burns and Iggy together?
They're just immortal poets, the pair of them as well, and they were right out there. They knew how to enjoy themselves above all, and went for that. They had an understanding of the necessity for us to be together, especially at times like we've just been through. Come together and celebrate life and liberty.
Yeah.
And that's what we're actually working on just now. Burns' what's known as Jolly Beggars, Love and Liberty, a cantata. We just started that and did the first performance of that on our own live stream on Burns Night, which people can find on YouTube.
Now, when you say your own live stream, you're talking about the Bum Clocks.
I am indeed.
Now, the Bum Clocks is your band with your brother Russell, who was in Win and Fire Engines, and Malcolm Ross, who was in Joseph K. and Orange Juice.
And Aztec Camera.
And Aztec Camera. I didn't say that on the radio the other day, you're right. And Coco from the Gin Goblins.
Yes, he's just joined us on bass. This is the first time we've ever had a bass player. Oh, my God.
So the Bum Clocks, again, some people will be thinking that's a pretty punk rock name, but it's actually from a Burns poem.
It's from the end of Twa Dogs. The last verse, Twa Dogs, the bum clock hummed with lazy drone. It's a name for a flying summer beetle, a Scottish beetle. And that's how I introduce us many a time. We are the Scottish Beatles.
Perfect. Now you go back to punk rock to the late 70s. You were in the Dirty Reds.
Dirty Reds, forerunners of the Fire Engines. But then I had to give it up for acting, really.
For acting, darling.
Yes.
Well, I'm not saying it was a good move, but it probably was. Although Davey and Russell obviously went on to great things.
Yes, totally.
It's wonderful having you here.
The EP.
Yeah, the Bum Clocks EP, I was just about to say. Tree of Liberty is out now on bizarrely, a Ramsgate label, Ramrock Records.
But not that bizarre, because head honcho Ramrock is Joe Wallace. Hiya, Joe, if you're watching. And Joe Wallace was born in Rossie Place.
So which is totally bizarre. But brilliant, and they're a great label. It's a fantastic EP. Talk us through it. There's a Stooges crossover, like Iggy Pop,
there's
Dirt.
A bit of that. We do that, Dirt and Despondency, but we do some Burns originals like Daunting Me, and we take Tree of Liberty and put it together with Corey Yows and make that into a rallying call. We do, God, what else do we do on it? We do Jockey's Tane, the Parting Kiss. That's dedicated to dear pal of ours, Jock Scott, who was a great rock and roll poet as well.
Indeed.
And our executive producer, Joseph Malik, he joined us on the live stream the other night as well, and that is what's just taken us on to another level as well. The people that we've been working with, Salim McGrorty, he produced it with Malcolm and Russell, and we've got Chris Grieve, we've got Roseanne Erskine, we've got Stevie Christie on the keys.
Well, I think it's it's an amazing EP, and I think it's fascinating your connection with between Burns and Iggy. They were, in their own ways, wild men, and they loved freedom and liberty. You're going to perform something for us now. We've already mentioned it, Twa Dogs.
Yes, well, it's showing that Twa Dogs was about Rabbie and Iggy, and then a mash of what they put together as well, songs. So it's a little medley that I'm going to do, but there they are on the back here. You can see what camera, Rabbie and Iggy, and this was all designed, a wonderful Edinburgh designer who came from Corstorphine, just down the road from me in Clanraston, Laura Lees of The Mighty Stitch. She did all this embroidery. So, shall I go for it?
Go for it. Dean Byrne performing Twa Dogs here for the Big Burns Bash. I cannot wait for this. Go for it.
'Twas in this place in Scotland's Isle that goes by the name of Old King Kyle, upon a bonny day in June, while tearing through an afternoon, twa dogs, the weren't thrang at hame, forgathered, ance upon a time. The first I'll name, they call him Caesar. Keep it for his master's voice and pleasure, his hair, his size, his mouth, his lugs. Show he is nane of Scotland's dogs, but while put someplace far away, from Detroit City. No, I want to be your dog. His lockered, lettered, braw brass collar shows him the gentleman and scholar, but though he is o' high degree, the fiendy pride, nae pride has Iggy. He would spend an hour caressing, even with a tinkler gypsy's messing, at kirk or market mill or smiddy, nae totted tyke, though ersin duddy, but he would stone as glad to see him, and strown on stains and hillocks wi' him. Let's pish. The t'other was a plumage collie, a rhyming, ranting, raving rabby. We for his friend and comrade had him, and in his freaks had Luath cat him. After some dug in Heelan sang, was named lang syne. Lord knows how lang he was a gash and faithful tyke that ever lap a shook or dyke is on his sonsy buzzant face. I got him friends in ilka place. His breast was white, his toozy back, wheel clad with coaty glossy black, his gauzy tail with upward curl hung o'er his hurdies wi' a swirl. Nae doot, but they were fae no other, an unca pack and thick together, with social nose, they snuffed and snouked, whilst mice and moody works, they howked, while scoured the wa in lang excursion and worried other in diversion, till tired at last, with mony a farce, they sat them down upon their arse. And so began a long digression about the lords o' the creation. And the ladies. In Mauchline there dwells 6 proper young belles, the pride of the place and its neighbourhood. Oh, their carriage and dress. Oh, a stranger would guess that in London or Paris they'd gone. Oh, Miss Miller is fine. Miss Markland's divine. Miss Smith, oh, she has wit. And Miss Betty is braw. There's beauty and fortune to get with Miss Katie Morton. But Armour, oh, Jean Armour, oh, she's the jewel for me of them all. Green Grove, the rashes, oh. Green Grove, the rashes, oh. The sweetest hours that ever I spend are spent among the lasses, oh. 'Twas late yestreen that I met wi' ane, and wow, but she was gentle, oh. A hand she put to my cravat, the t'other to my pinta, whoa. Green Grove, the rashes, oh. Green Grove, the rashes, oh. The sweetest hours that ever I spent among the lasses, oh. Let's take it down, eh? Let's take it down to that lassie from New York City, oh. See her walking down the street like she kens where she's gone, in those old clays and that new body. Just a wee hint of dirt in her eye, cracks starting to show through the makeup. Oh, the lassie's got character, the lassie's got soul, and that's the kind of lassie that I want to know. Green Grove, the rashes, oh. Green Grove, the rashes, oh. The sweetest hours that ever I spent among the lasses, oh. Now I'm ready to close my eyes. I knew I'm ready, close my mind. I knew I'm ready, feel your hands, to lose my hair on the Ayrshire sands. Cause now I wanna be your Doug. Now I want to be your Doug. Now I want to be your Doug. So come on! Green grow the rashes, oh, green grow the rashes, oh, the sweetest stars that ever spent among the lasses, oh ho ho! For all the lasses in the house, thank you.
Oh, look, I'm got everyone in this room. Round of applause, please.
Thank you.
I hope you can hear that applause on the stream. Phenomenal, Tam. Thank you so much for coming in. And doing
Pleasure.
that. Tell us a bit about whiskey. I mean,
well, I'll tell you about my relationship with the Scottish Malt Whisky Society.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask you.
Yes, and that was 40 years ago. I'd just started as an actor, and then we went down to Leith, and my pal Vary Sylvester, that I was working with at the time, she knew Pip Hills and Leslie, and so we got a tour before the Scottish Malt Whisky Society vaults opened. We got a tour of the place and shown around all the flats. There was this one flat, I remember it so well, it had this big black wrought iron piece that was in the middle of it, and I just thought, I'd love that flat. Pip says, if you can get a mortgage, he says, well...
It's yours.
Yeah, and I was an actor, you know, there's no chance of me getting a mortgage, so I missed it then. And I moved away from Edinburgh quite rapidly after that.
But you might have been an actual resident in the...
Yes, I might have been.
Is that not what we all want, ladies and gentlemen? To be a resident in a whisky society, to actually live in one.
Yes. And here's to Pip.
Aye, here's to Pip, and here's to you. Thank you so much, Slange. You were fantastic as always. What a force of nature. Tam Dean Byrne, Slange.
Thanks, folks.
Now,
Robert.
let's talk about, you know, our members' rooms. There are, of course, members' rooms in Edinburgh too. There's one in Glasgow, one in London, and our partner bars all over the world. There's kindred spirits if you go into them. There's special bottlings, society bottlings, and a discount on all the drams, which is the main thing, I suppose. You know it. But one of the most special inns and one of the most special partner bars is the Globe Inn in Dumfries. It dates back to 1610. It was also Burns' favourite inn when he was working as an exciseman in Dumfries. And Burns had been invited to lease Ellisland Farm near Dumfries. The farm proved to be sort of unproductive, and in 1791 he gave up the farm and he moved into Dumfries, which... there was a silver lining because he was closer to the Globe Inn and he could go in every day. Right, we're going to investigate. Former landlady Jane Brown now runs a tour of that. She calls it a living museum at the Globe Inn. And the Society's Richard Goslin paid a visit, met Jane, and found out a little bit more about it.
Thanks, Vic. We're here in Dumfries and we're at the Globe Inn, which is an historic inn which Burns had a strong association with. We're going to take a look around. We've got the perfect guest to give us the guided tour. So come this way.
Welcome to the Globe Inn.
Thank you very much.
Come in.
Jane Brown is a former landlady at the Globe and now offers tours of the historic inn. Jane, should I say Jean? You're looking very good as Jean Armour tonight. Tell us what makes this place special to Burns, and tell us exactly where we are in the Globe Inn.
Well, the Globe Inn was established in 1610, but Robert Burns didn't move to Dumfries to 1787 to 1796 when he died, and during that time the Globe was a very vibrant place. This is called Mrs. Hislop's kitchen, and this would have been the servery, and you can see why. We have the lovely old kitchen range here that would have been here in Burns' time. So Burns would have frequented the Globe very much. He lived out at Ellisland, but there would be many a time when he couldn't get home. So he was on a pony, of course, 200 miles a week sometimes. So he would come here, where he would be offered things like port, mead, claret wine, ale, all served from the jugs that you see here into the tankards and the goblets of the people sitting round. I would love to have been a serving wench then. It would have been great fun.
I would have loved to have been part of the company. He would have been a celebrity figure in this pub.
Yes, and educated, so he was a reader. He could read and write, and he would read out the news from the papers that came down with the coaches from Edinburgh and Glasgow. People would be hanging on his every word and listen to his quotes and his poetry and things like that. I'm sure the merchants of the town, to do with the shipping, would just enjoy being in his company. He did once say that he gave each one of them a slice of his constitution.
From the dining area, Jane leads me to where most of the actual drinking took place. Jane, where are we now?
Right, this is what we call the Burns House, and this would have been the bar area in Burns's time, but it wasn't a bar you went up to. As I said, the waitresses would just come and fill up your drinking vessels. And the panelling in these walls all dates back to 1780 when Burns was here. You'll notice here is a painting of his funeral procession in 1796. And they reckon to be 11,000 to 12,000 people lined the streets. And he's being escorted, his coffin's being escorted by the Royal Volunteers, who he nicknamed the Awkward Squad. The special thing about this room is the poet's chair, and it sits there in the corner. And you can just imagine him sitting there, reciting his poems or doing a quip about someone walking in the room. He had a great humour, so everyone would be listening to his every word, sitting here in this wee room.
And we can sit in the chair in the present day?
Yes, you're allowed to sit in the chair, but there is a custom attached to it. You have to recite Burns, or you've got to buy everybody in the pub a drink.
Could be an expensive ride tonight. Upstairs, Jane reveals another fascinating part of Burns's story with the Globe Inn. So we're upstairs, Jane, and I suppose we've seen where Burns did his drinking and where he wrote some poetry, but maybe this is where more of the action happened, given Burns's reputation. Where are we now?
This is what we call the Burns bedroom, and this is where Robert Burns had an affair with Anna Park, who was the landlord's niece. And Anna gave birth to a baby girl 9 days before his wife Jean gave birth to a son. Now, Anna moved to Edinburgh, to Leith, and I think because she had a baby, she couldn't get the work, the employment she wanted, so the baby was brought back to Jean ARMOUR, who most compassionately brought the child up. And she stayed as her child till adulthood, and stayed as a good friend right through to Jean's death. It really is. But he must have thought something of Anna, because he wrote, "Yestreen had a pint of wine, a place where body saw na. Yestreen lay on this breast of mine, the gowden locks of Anna." And the last verse, "Come in thy raven plumage night, sun, moon and stars withdraw na, and bring an angel pen to write my transport's way, my Anna."
And I think one of the most extraordinary things about this room is that the windows actually have etchings which were made by Burns, and they're still there.
Absolutely.
I mean, all these years later, it's just incredible.
He etched 5 on 5 windows, and 3 of them were removed in 1834 and given to the Birthplace and Galloway Museum. And you can still see them there if you ask to see them. But we have 2 originals. We've got the 3 copies there that someone traced from those originals, and they're on one of the windows, but we've still got 2 original etchings by Robert Burns. And to have that is a gift. It's priceless.
Well, it's the kind of thing you expect to see in a museum, you know, very carefully protected, and here they are still in the same pub which Burns frequented, and in the bedroom where, as you've explained, he passed some good times as well.
Yeah, I'll just point them out to you and read them to you. Up here, they have 4-liner here. "Oh, lovely Polly Stewart, oh, charming Polly Stewart, there's no a flower that blooms in May that's half so fair as thou art." Great words to women. And this one here, "Gin a body meet a body coming through the grain, gin a body kiss a body, the things a body's ain."
Right, that's a wee variation on the
coming through the
coming through the
eye.
eye.
Yes.
Fantastic.
Isn't it wonderful to have these though?
Astonishing. What a great tour. Jane, thank you very much
Oh,
for
you're very
showing us
welcome.
around.
As you can see, I'm very passionate. I wish I wasn't Jean Armour.
No, it's an absolute treat, and to be able to step in to what is a society partner bar as well, and there's a great selection of society whiskies down the stairs, but to be here and experience all that is a pleasure in the hands of the best guide I can imagine.
You get a feel of him, don't you?
Absolutely.
You do get a feel of him here.
It's in the walls, isn't it?
Yes.
And in the glass. Thank you, Jane.
You're welcome.
The wonderful Jane Brown there as Jean Armour, talking to Richard Goslin from the Scotch Malt Whisky Society. And can I just say, if it wasn't for Richard, you wouldn't be watching this stream. He's the man that put it all together, so slange to Richard. Now, we've just seen Jane giving us a tour of the Globe Inn in Dumfries. Very interesting it was too, but now we're going to have her read a little bit of poetry from Burns' very own chair in the dining room. Oh, were I on Parnassus Hill.
Robert Burns wrote some beautiful poems and songs, but my favourites are the romantic ones, because I believe he was a true romantic. And he did write the famous one, "My love is like a red, red rose that's newly sprung in June. My love is like a melody that's sweetly played in tune." But the one I like best is the one that he wrote for me, Jean Armour. And this is the last two verses of Parnassus Hill. By night, by day, afield at hame, the thoughts of thee my breast inflame, and I muse and sing thy name. I only live to love thee. Though I were doomed to wander on beyond the sea, beyond the sun, till my last weary sand was run, till then, and then, I'd love thee. Wow.
Oh, were I on Parnassus Hill with Jane Brown, a great rendition of that. Burns, of course, thinking and comparing his experiences to that sacred Greek mountain, getting his inspiration there. Wonderful to have you with us here on the Big Burns Bash, and it is time to go to another of our international branches. The Scotch Malt Whisky Society has spread all over the world, as I was saying earlier on, and we're going to go to China, and we're going to hear their version of that classic Auld Lang Syne.
怎能忘记旧日朋友，心中能不怀想？旧日朋友岂能相忘？友谊地久天长。友谊万岁，朋友，友谊万岁。举杯同饮同声歌颂，友谊地久天长。我们曾经终日游荡在故乡金山上，我们也曾历尽苦辛，到处奔波流浪。友谊万岁，朋友，友谊万岁。举杯同饮同声歌颂，友谊地久天长。
I told you we were diverse and international in scope. Well, I tell you what, Robert Burns is as well. There's the China branch of the Scotch Malt Whisky Society singing us Auld Lang Syne. Lovely to see a few bottles in the picture there and a few drams. Let us know what's in your glass, as I said earlier on. And for everyone who's commenting and messaging and asking questions, lovely to hear from you. We're getting back to you as soon as possible. It is the Big Burns Bash here, being live streamed everywhere on the planet and possibly on other planets as well, although I haven't quite checked. What was Burns' relationship with whiskey like, though? That's what I want to know, and that's what you want to know as well. We asked Scotch Malt Whisky Society Global Brand Ambassador John McCheyne to tell us what Ushkaba meant to the bards. Here is John joining us from our London members' room at Grenville Street to tell us a little bit more.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I've been invited to talk to you about Burns and whisky. But first a bit about Burns himself. He lived a very short life, dying at 37. Not like the old lady recently in the news. 105 years old, and she credited her longevity to having 1 dram of whisky each night before bed. 1 dram a night, 105 years old. I'm going to be here forever. But anyway, Burns lived through a tumultuous period for Scotland and Scotch drink. Among all of the poems and songs that he sang, he always took time to respect the drink as a drink of the people, and he believed in it passionately. In his poem Scotch Drink, he said, "Let other poets raise a fracas, but vines and wines and drunken Bacchus, and crabbit names and storage rackers and greater lug. I sing the juice Scotch beer can make us in glass or jug." So, Burns, he lived in the period of the Scottish Enlightenment, when great Scots like Adam Smith, David Hume, Francis Hutcheson, to name but a few, were leaders in economics, social understanding, philosophy and other areas. It was this period in which Voltaire, the French writer and historian, during the period leading up to the French Revolution, said, "We look to Scotland for all of our ideas on civilization." But despite these famous names I've mentioned, we don't remember their memory as much as we do Robert Burns. We honour Robert Burns, the poet ploughman from Ayrshire. The way we celebrate and honour Burns has no direct parallel anywhere in the world. Russia were the first country in the world to make a postage stamp in Burns' honour, and a few years ago at the Burns Club of London, a group of Russian school children were on a tour of London. They were invited to the Burns Club of London, and in front of all of the members and Alex Salmon, a 12-year-old girl from St. Petersburg recited a Scots Burns poem in perfect Scottish dialect. There wasn't a dry eye in the house, but such is his effect internationally. And as a man, we know Burns enjoyed socialising and enjoying a drink with friends. It was one of his great passions. And Scotch whisky was his drink of preference, although he enjoyed claret and ale too, like many of us. He said, "O thou my muse, good old Scotch drink, whether through whimpering worms thou jink, or richly brown remoor the brink in glorious fame, inspire me till I lisp and wink and sing thy name." It's said he had his first whisky at the age of 22. Some say at that age he lost his virginity too. We don't know which came first, but I'll tell you what, if it's true, he surely packed in a lot of action in both areas in the next 15 years, that's for sure. His passion for friends and conviviality led he and his brother to start up the Tarbolton Bachelor's Club. Appropriate for its name, perhaps, but how would Burns have welcomed being a member of the Scotch Malt Whisky Society today? Where the lassies are as welcome as the lads. Sipping his whisky in Leith, perhaps, telling tales, enjoying mixed company with Scotch in hand, and not any foreign drinks. Ye Scots who wish old Scotland well, ye chief to you my tale tell. Poor plackless devils like mysel, it sets you ill, with bitter death through wines to mel, or foreign gill. But what about Scotch? O whisky, soul of plays and pranks, accept a bardie's grateful thanks, when wanting thee with tuneless cranks are my poor verses. Now comes, they rattle in their ranks at others' verses. And of course he couldn't resist a verse or two after a night out with his cronies. Here are we met three merry boys how tower we, and many a night we've merry been, and many more we hope to see. Maybe it could be written a couple of 100 years later, after a wee night in the vaults of Queen Street perhaps, with the Scotch Malt Whisky Society. After the 1784 Wash Act, he bemoaned the difference between Lowland and Highland malt the Act created. He described Lowland malt as rascally liquor for rascals to drink, and Highland malt as quality of taste and strength. And he bemoaned the loss of Ferrintosh distillery in the Highlands, which lost its tax privileges after the Act and soon disappeared. Before that, it had been very affordable. Now, Ferring Tosh was sadly lost. Scotland laments from coast to coast. Now, colic grips and barking hosts may kill us all, but loyal Forbes, his charter boast, is Tarawa. So he would have appreciated the range of whisky we can enjoy today, Highland and Lowland. Burns would also use his pen sometimes to voice feelings where he thought the powers that be in Westminster passed laws to restrict Scotch. After the 1786 Distillery Act, when export taxes on Scotch were raised in an author's earnest cry and prayer, Burns wrote, "Tell them how hae the chief direction, ere since they laid that cursed restriction on aqua vitae, and roused them up to strong conviction, and move their pity." Burns would have been a joyous society member today. He knew how Scotch could improve the mood and even raise your courage. John Barleycorn was a hero bold, of noble enterprise, for if you do but taste his blood, it will make your courage rise. And, for the lassies too, 'twill make a man forget his woe, till heighten all his joy. 'Twill make a widow's heart to sing, no tear were in her eye. It's said Burns made whisky Scotland's national drink. And Michael Jackson, the famous whisky writer about 15 years ago, said Scotch is the only drink in the world that you can ask for anywhere in the world by reference to its nation of birth alone. So in any bar, in any city, in any country in the world, you can ask for a Scotch. You don't even have to add the horse whisky. And that is very much part of Burns' legacy. Between the Act of Union in 1707 and the outbreak of World War I, 2.5 million Scots left Scotland. Some were forced off the land because of the clearances, of course. Landowners drive to replace people with sheep. And they took Burns with them, now the most celebrated poet in the world, and they took their love of Scotch too, making it the world's premier spirit. Pip Hills, our founder, wrote about Burns in his book, The Founder's Tale, and Pip said his creation of the Scotch Malt Whisky Society and the ethos behind it was an emulation of all that Burns lived for and was passionate about. Perhaps his most famous line is "Freedom and whisky gang together, tak off your dram." Ironic that he became an exciseman after having written the lines, "Thou cursed horse leeches of the excise, who make the whisky stills your prize. Hold up your hondio once, twice, thrice, and seize the blinkers, and bake them up in Brunstein pies for poor damn drinkers." He was a man of the people, a man's a man for all that, but a lover of life and the lassies and whisky. So here's a toast, one which can apply to the camaraderie and friendship of our members the world over. So here's a bottle, and an honest friend, what would ye wish for mair, man? Who kens before his life may end, what his share of care may be, man? So catch the moments as they fly, and use them as ye ought, man. Believe me, happiness is shy, and comes not aye when sought, man. Slanjava.
The one and only John McCheyne there with a little bit about what whisky meant to the bard, to Robert Burns. Joining us from our London members' room in Greville Street. Wonderful to have him on the programme. I hope you're enjoying yourselves. I've just been handed a small bit of paper which tells me that I'm going to give out a few shout-outs. Firstly, to new member Christian, who has just joined the Whisky Society right now. So lovely to have you on board, Christian. Welcome to the club. I'll see you in the vaults in Leith for one or two of those at some point. And also shout-outs to Society regulars Glenn, Leslie and Anne. If anyone wants to get in touch, please do. We'll read out some names, give you shout-outs and say hello over the next wee while. But there's so much stuff to pack in. We're going to go for another international shout-out, if you like. There's a huge diaspora of Scots. There are Burns suppers happening all over the world, as you might imagine. This place, more than any, will have Burns suppers probably for the entire year. Canada. We're going to join our Canadian branch and Kelly and Rob Carpenter.
Thanks, Vic, and hi from SMWS Canada. Thanks for inviting us along to take part in your Big Burns Bash.
Burns Day in Canada is celebrated very much like it is in Scotland. Burn suppers, which include haggis and poetry and songs and toasting, and just the accent that's a little bit different.
And the dram that we're pouring tonight to celebrate the great bard is this peated number 4239 Whisky to Mull Over, which we thought was an appropriate title when you're trying to get through the Burns poetry. So cheers to that.
Lovely to hear from Kelly and Rob in Canada, raising a glass to us all, and I raise one back. Right, I had the great pleasure of speaking to STINA TWEEDDALE, who performs under the name HONEYBLOOD, for a recent podcast, Whisky, Talk, Malts and Music. If you want to go and check out the series, they're up on all the podcast platforms digitally. You can also watch the conversations on YouTube as well. So far we've had STINA, we've had Ian Rankin, the author, we've had Justin Curry and Norman Blake, and we've got more guests joining us on Whisky Talk, Malts and Music over the next few weeks and months. So check that out. It's worth a listen. Basically what we asked them to do is pair up 5 whiskies with 5 tunes. It's a bit esoteric, it's a bit odd, but it's actually a really, really good listen. I then go off-piste a little bit and chat to them about their careers and lives in music or art or literature or wherever. Anyway, I got on the phone to STINA TWEEDDALE and I asked her, would she be up for performing a few tunes for our Big Burns Bash? She said yes, and we're going to hear a couple of her own, Bud and Souvenir, and a version of Burns's classic A Fond Kiss. Here's STINA TWEEDDALE.
Forever Sludge. Problems seem to stem from the little seeds I plant. I try to stop, I can't. It's not in my nature. Dip it in the bud. They don't make it hurt enough. Dead in his tracks when I finally think I'm never going back. They begin to flower. No, oh, oh, it's not your fault at all. No, oh, oh, it's not your fault at all. No, oh, 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 it's not your fault. The white flag is hanging on the wall. Nip it in the bud. Tend to bloom I do, like a nursemaid to a battle wound. Stars are like a trophy I carry with me. He whispers your song. Come and see what grows. Now let the leaves have by falling off. What must you do? Wait to welcome the frost. Nip it in the bud. No, oh, oh, it's not your fault at all. No, oh, oh, it's not your fault at all. No, oh, oh, it's not your fault. The white flag is hanging on the wall. Hanging on the wall. Nip it in the bud. 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 Stars are like buttons in the blanket of skies. I'm holding on to the corner of a perfect night. You make me feel like I won a prize. You make me feel like in a gift shop. Just a perfect memento. Take the best one, souvenir for your soul. Take home and remember me by in between when you leave. What do I get to keep? Why? This ain't forever. Never thought that it was. When we're together, my heart takes a pause. I've been trying to tell you I'm in love with your soul. Maybe it can wait till tomorrow. Yeah, it can wait. But in a gift shop, choose a perfect memento. Take the best one, between when you leave. What do I get to keep? Why? Everywhere you go, 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 take me wherever you go. A souvenir for your soul. Take me wherever you go. A souvenir for your soul. Take me wherever you go. A souvenir for your soul. Take me wherever you go. A souvenir for your soul, your soul, your soul. Take me wherever you go. Take me wherever you go.
The wonderfully talented STINA TWEEDDALE there. She is known as HONEYBLOOD, so go and check out her music online and on vinyl. That's where it sounds best, of course. She just performed two of her own songs, Bud and Souvenir, and also a version of Burns' A Fond Kiss. Such an amazing talent. And as I said earlier on, please go and search out the Whisky Talk Malt and Music podcast that we've been doing. STINA paired up 5 tunes with 5 single malts, and it was a great conversation. Hopefully you can go and have a listen or even a watch of that at some point. Right, it's the Big Burns Bash. I'm Vic Galloway, and we've got a few more shout-outs here. See, another bit of paper. Scotch Malt Whisky Society brand ambassador Patrick in Sweden is hosting a Burns supper this weekend. Shout out to you, Patrick. Lovely to have you on board. Enjoy your Burns supper at the weekend. Enjoy your haggis, neeps and tatties. We've also got a shout out for Whiskey Throttle. What a great name. He's been a member, or she has been a member since 2013. So lovely to have you on board as well, Whiskey Throttle. And Jess from Montreal is watching. So, people from all around the world joining us. And we're going to go over to our Tokyo branch of the Scotch Malt Whisky Society now. And we're going to join Janelle Ong, who is going to sing us a special version of Auld Lang Syne. Janelle, over to you.
Hi everybody, this is Janelle from SMWS Japan. The song that I just sang along with, I think you all will be very familiar. It's Robert Burns' Auld Lang Syne, but this is the Japanese version. Its title is called Hotaru no Hikari. It's a song that talks about the hardship that a student deals with in his quest of for knowledges. So it's a common song used in Japanese graduation ceremony, and it dated way back to 1881. So this is how we celebrate Robert Burns in Japan.
Isn't that superb? Janelle Ong from our Japanese Society branch with Auld Lang Syne. A wonderful rendition, and also a lovely bottle she had there in her hand. Now, Society members will be fortunate to have read the recent issue of Unfiltered, our monthly magazine, where we read about the remarkable life and work of Sir Geoff Palmer. Now, Sir Geoff travelled at the age of 14 from Jamaica to the UK and was originally designated as being educationally subnormal, which is unbelievable in this day and age. But he has had an incredible life and career, and he joins me right now. He's gone on to set up the world-renowned International Centre for Brewing and Distilling at Heriot-Watt University. He's also known for his groundbreaking work on barley abrasion, also his human rights activism, and he's an ambassador for the Robert Burns World Federation. He's joining me on a screen, and it's lovely to have him here. Sir Geoff Palmer, how are you?
I'm very well.
It's good to have you
Can you
here.
hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you loud and clear. You're looking great, with your braces on there as well.
Well, thank you. It's the Palmer tartan.
Is it? Great. Quite right too. And have you got a glass of something?
Well, yes, I've got it. It's a very large one.
A large one. That's the best one. The larger, the better. Sir Geoff, tell us a bit about Burns and your connection with him.
Well, when my mom left Jamaica in 1951 to come to the UK, she left me with her sisters, and these sisters were very religious. The two things I had to do. I had to go to church 3 times every Sunday. And I also had to go to school. And that was it. And of course, when I think it was one week, we had a teacher called Mrs. Davidson. And it was about 1952. And, she was teaching us to sing. And she started to teach us these songs. And, I'd never heard of them. Nobody had. And they were a chap called Robert Burns, she said. And, I thought, well, you're sitting, I was about 12. And then she started. And one was, my love is like a red, red rose.
Yes.
And the other one was Coming Through the Rye. And I loved them. I thought they were wonderful because they were about girls.
Yeah, that's right.
And so when I went home that day, my aunts, they always ask you, what did you do today, boy, at school?
Yeah.
And I said, well, we sang some songs, Auntie, and do you want me to sing them? And they said, oh, of course. And I started. And when I was, coming through the rye, and my love is like a red, red rose, blooming in June, and they caught me by the shoulder and said, "What was that?" And I said, these were the songs I was taught today.
And did they disapprove?
Oh, they disapproved. They said, we're going to the teacher to tell us those naughty songs. You're a wee boy. You're a boy. You're not supposed to be singing stuff like that.
So they understood these songs' real meaning, and you were kind of enjoying the words, I take it.
Well, that's right. I didn't. I knew there was something about love and etc., but I did not know they had any implications. They did. And they thought I was at 12, in Jamaica. When you're a wee boy, you're not supposed to behave like a man. You're wearing short trousers. And therefore, my introduction to Burns was, it was fine. It was one where my aunts thought that sort of mature stuff wasn't for little boys. And I've never forgotten that, but I just thought it was funny.
Yeah, I'm sure.
In a sense.
And I suppose ever so slightly rebellious at the time as well.
Well, yeah, I loved it in a sense that, if you're 12 and still wearing short trousers, in Jamaica, my aunts used to say, there are no men in this house, and there wasn't, just myself and my brother. And we had to wear short trousers and socks and shoes when we're going to school and church.
And behave
You know,
yourself.
and behave yourself. That's it.
And
behave
not,
yourself. Behave yourself like a little boy.
Yes, and not sing songs about love and romance and sex.
Oh no! I mean, God, this is just bad news. You know, this was. I went to church 3 times every Sunday, and she would have reported me to the minister of the church that I need some attention.
I see. That's the thing. As I was speaking to Tam Dean Byrne earlier on, he was a wild man, Burns, and you know, a lot of children growing up in Scotland and learning these songs and poems don't necessarily connect with that until they're a bit older. But you obviously, you know, came across this at a young age as well. Has Burns been a constant for you in your life since then?
Well, yes, he has, in a sense that when I left Jamaica and came to the UK, and I arrived in Scotland in 1964 for an interview after being rejected by a very famous politician who told me I should go home and grow bananas.
Unbelievable.
I did point out to him it was difficult to grow bananas in the area of London where I lived. And I was taken by a wonderful woman called Professor Anna MacLeod, and she worked at the Heriot-Watt College then, it was called. It wasn't a university. And she took me for a PhD, and the PhD was joint between Edinburgh University and Heriot-Watt. And during my period, during the PhD, I got to know about Robert Burns. I attended a few Burns suppers, and I then realized it was the same guy I was singing about when I was 12.
Right.
You know, but it had greater significance because I realized, and I start reading about it, that Burns knew a lot about Jamaica. It's one of the countries he knew a lot about.
Now, I'd like to ask you this, as you know, someone that's travelled from Jamaica to the UK. How do you reconcile Burns's potential job on a plantation with the fact that he wrote "A Man's a Man for All That" and "A Slave's Lament," for example?
Well, again, you know, I think it's like it's with Burns. You have to take him in terms of dates. A lot of people don't do that. And you know, going to Jamaica was 1786. You know, the Slave's Lament and A Man's a Man. Slave's Lament, I think, is 1792. And A Man's a Man is about 1795. So here we have Burns as a young man. He knew exactly what was going on during slavery. And therefore, if you read your Burns carefully, you will see that he knew what the political activities of the time. And 1786, you know, it was about going to the Caribbean to better yourself, to go there, make some money, come back and marry up, as some of them did. And he therefore decided, you know, he was going to try that. Of course, he didn't go.
No.
But the point is that he wanting to go was almost normal. And you know, he also was going to take one of his young ladies with him. He was going to take Highland Mary. And of course, she went to Greenock and he didn't turn up. I went to Greenock to give a talk not long ago, and the school children, as soon as I start talking about Burns and about going to Jamaica, a little girl stuck her hand up and said, "You're right, sir, Island Mary's buried up the road."
Right.
So, you know, he didn't go to Jamaica, but he also, about the same period, you know, but 1784, he was writing about Henry Dundas.
Mm-hmm.
And Henry Dundas, I've done a lot of work on him recently.
Yes, yeah.
To do with his statue in the middle of Edinburgh.
Mm-hmm.
We've changed his plaque, changed the narrative, put on it that he gradually abolished the slave trade. Now, Dundas is more perceptive than people give him credit for, because Burns was writing in about 1784 about Dundas, and he called him Slee Dundas. And of course, Henry Dundas was impeached in 1806, the last politician in Britain to be impeached.
So
Burns spotted.
Yes, he may have played a role in that in some way.
Well, Burns spotted from 1784 that he was dodgy.
Yeah.
You know, and to me, people are still trying to debate, is he dodgy or not? Burns actually spotted it and wrote it.
Yeah, years in advance.
Years in advance.
Burns also had a real connection with whiskey, of course, which is why we're here as well. And you have, you know, led the world in barley abrasion, and you have a connection with, I would imagine, John Barleycorn.
Yes, the poem. I think he wrote that early as well. It's about 1782. He wrote John Barleycorn. You know, he adapted it. It's an adapted piece of work. But if you want to read about the whiskey making process, starting with barley, you know, I could have based all my lectures on the same progression.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Because it starts off with the barley growing in the field, being harvested, and being malted, you know, being soaked in water, steeped, being germinated, and being kilned, and then being, you know, mashed and extracted and distilled.
And
now, the point is all in one piece of work.
Yeah, and you helped quicken that process. You found new ways of quickening the malting process, didn't you?
Well, that's right. In fact, it's so simple. What it is that everybody thought when you're making malt, the enzymes came from the germ only. You know, the bit that grew. And my research with Professor MacLeod showed that a lot of the enzymes came from the bran that enclosed the grain. And my work was, if it came from the bran, stimulate the bran as quickly as possible. And that's what we did.
Yeah, and you made that discovery many years ago, decades ago.
Yeah, this was 1968. So again, you know, it's, to me, the Burns is, that poem is the end. There's the end verse. I don't know if you remember it. It says, then let us toast John Barleycorn, each man a glass in hand, and let his prosperity never fail in old Scotland.
I know. Superb, superb. Well, look, you're an expert in distilling and brewing, and it's lovely to have you join us. Tell us a little bit about your work as an ambassador for the Robert Burns World Federation as well. What do you do?
Well, I've got a little cough because I've got a bit of COVID.
Oh, do you?
Yeah.
Thank you for joining us if you're not feeling well. Even more. Wow. I hope you're okay.
Well, this is, it's some people are worse than I am. So, and I've got a wife that looks after me. So
you're looking very chipper, sir. Don't worry about it.
Thank you very much. Yeah, for the ambassador, one of the events which I did, I went down to Greenock early on, and you know that's where the Burns night concept originated.
Mm-hmm.
And we had a celebration of that. And I went down and, met a lot of people, discussed, Burns talked about, is what we were talking about earlier, his relationship with the West Indies. Well, I still say the West Indies. If I keep saying Jamaica, I'm going to get into trouble. But it was Jamaica,
Mm-hmm.
and to show that the man had an international recognition of people. And one of the things that I was pointing out was that if you look at his work, if we just say linked into slavery, he didn't go.
Mm-hmm.
But if you look at his work, he wrote, the Slave's Lament.
Mm-hmm.
He also wrote Ode Sacred to the Memory of Mrs. Oswald of Auchencruve. I don't think a lot of people say, well, what's that got to do with slavery? It's just one of the most, shows how much he was on the ball, that Ode Sacred to the Memory of Mrs. Oswald of Auchencruve, Richard Oswald, that's Mr. Oswald, was in Jamaica, went from Glasgow to Jamaica
Mm-hmm.
in the 1750s. He was a friend of the Grants of Speyside,
Mm-hmm.
and they introduced him to Mary Ramsay, and she had inherited her father's slave plantations. And of course, Oswald, which was not uncommon, maybe Burns wanted to do a bit of that, where he married Mary Ramsay and inherited her plantation and took her plantations. And he then went into the slavery business with the Grants. He came back to Scotland and bought an enormous house in Auchencruve, Auchencruve, okay? And that house is still there.
Mm-hmm.
And I went and visited it, and they wouldn't let me in.
Wow.
And I did point out, this is my money.
Yeah, exactly.
But the Oswalds lived in Auchencruve. They passed away, and when Mrs. Oswald died, I think Burns was aware of that.
Yes.
And he wrote Ode Sacred to the Memory of Mrs. Oswald in Auchencruve, and in it, there are a couple of lines, there are others that relate to their wealth.
Mm-hmm.
But he wrote, and I remember two lines. She was on an annuity of about 10,000 glittering pounds per year. 10,000.
Which would have been a huge amount back then. Huh?
Yeah, it's nearly approaching $1 million.
Mm-hmm.
But the powerful line of avarice was, she had hands that took, but never gave.
Well,
hands that took, but never gave. And that summed up the slave ownership.
Yeah.
And it is in Burns, one line.
Well, Burns is a complicated man, but a wonderful poet and songwriter, and I cannot think of a better global ambassador than yourself, Sir Geoff. Thank you so much for shedding a little bit of light on some of these works and also talking about your own experiences as well. It's a pleasure to have you as part of the Big Burns Bash.
Thank you very much. I heard the song, sort of A Fond Kiss.
Yeah, that's right, by STINA earlier.
Well, that's right. And Burns wrote that when Clorinda, his girlfriend, was going to Jamaica to meet her husband.
Well, I tell
you, A Fond Kiss.
Jeff, it's absolutely brilliant having you here. We're going to move on.
Thank you very much.
But we're going to actually stay in Jamaica because, as we've heard, an impoverished Burns did accept a job on a Jamaican plantation as a bookkeeper. He booked his passage in 1786, planning to leave, possibly with Highland Mary, as we've discussed. Unfortunately, Mary passed away and Burns' literary career took off. He moved to Edinburgh and became a star. Now, producer Kieran C. Murray has gathered work by various artists in Jamaica as well, and they go under the title Jamaica Sings Burns. We're delighted to bring just a little taste of that. Thank you, Sir Jeff. We're going to go over now to NICKEISHIA Barnes with her version of Ye Banks and Braes.
Hi guys, my name is NICKEISHIA Barnes and I'm absolutely feeling blessed to share in your night for Burns celebration. I'm all the way from Kingston, Jamaica.
Banks and braes, oh bonny tune, how can ye bloom so fresh and fair? How can ye chant, ye little birds? And I say weary folk care, thou I rode by bonny tune to see the rose and woodbine twined. A little bird sang always loud and fondly say, did I, oh mine, with love sweet upon its thorny trees, and my false lover stole my rose, but he left the thorn with me. Fair, how can ye chant, ye little birds? And I say weary folk care, and thou break my heart, ye
A phenomenal version of Ye Banks and Braes by NICKEISHIA Barnes there, recorded in Jamaica. Isn't that extraordinary and beautiful as well? What a great version. It is the Big Burns Bash, brought to you by the Scotch Malt Whisky Society. I'm Vic Galloway, and I tell you what, Burns doesn't just cross continents and languages, he also crosses generations and demographics as well. Len Penny discovered Burns's work at school. She got involved in Scots poetry recitals and has totally embraced Scots as a language with her work online and her Scots word of the day. I am delighted that she joins me right now. Len Penny, how are you?
Hello, I'm great. How you doing?
I'm good, thanks. Yes, all the better for seeing you on a screen, bizarrely. Now, we should just mention, people watching will notice the bizarre background. You're actually in your car in a lay-by.
Yeah, we were on the way home and they shut the roads, so we decided to just do what we could.
That's the power of the internet. It's wonderful. Thank you for joining us. Tell us about your connection with Burns, because I would imagine, as I was speaking to Tam Dean Byrne and Sir Geoff Palmer earlier on, you know, you get taught Burns at school, but not everyone connects with it. Not everyone likes it. In fact, a lot of people think it's a bit of a hassle to go through the poems. What was why the connection?
It was really the first time that I had experienced the Scots language in a respected and literary way in terms of being taught it at school. You know, everything else that we'd studied was in English and it was very sort of exclusive and I didn't really understand it. And then when I started studying Burns, there were a load of words that I knew from home and there were also a load of cool words that I didn't know that I'd then go and research. And it really sparked an interest in the Scots language out with the home, because it was the first time, as I say, that I'd seen literature written in it that was really respected and well known.
You now write in Scots as well. Do you think you're a bit of a kind of inspiration to young people to maybe pick up the language?
I hope so. I mean, I certainly like to write stuff for Wayne and I go into schools and talk to them, but I mean, I don't want to I don't want to blow my own trumpet there, but yeah, I think it's great now because there's a lot of interest in Wayne's now seeing the Scots language and people are writing their own poetry. And when I go into schools and we do workshops and things, there's no shortage of talent. So it's great to see the next generation picking it up.
Sure, and tell us about the Scots word of the day, which you put out on Twitter or via YouTube and so on. Tell us about that. What was the thinking behind that?
Well, I have a lot of friends that aren't Scottish and a lot of friends that don't speak Scots who are Scottish, and I'd be saying these words that they'd have no idea what they were and they'd be asking me, and I thought, why not just do a wee video? So originally it was just for my pals, but then I've got quite a few pals now that like it, so it's been great.
Oh, it's become a phenomenon. People love it all over the world. And they love you doing it as well and the way you explain it as well. I mean, I grew up with Scots because my mum's from the Borders, from Selkirk, and she used to hit me with all sorts of words that became oxters, hurdies, whatever it would be, that would just become part of our, you know, day-to-day language. But it's something that's living and breathing because of people like you.
Oh, it's so much fun, and you see it every year with people, you know, the Wayne standing up and doing Burns poems, that it's not dying out anytime soon.
Yeah, and you're sort of on the record as saying it's a shame that we celebrate the language once a year, basically, for Burns Night or celebrations around Burns Night, and that actually we should maybe use it a bit more often.
Absolutely. I think the fact that there is such an interest one day out of the year shows that we can extend that far past Burns Day, and that's why I like to write stuff in Scots and keep it going throughout the whole year, because it's not just for one night a year, it's for all the time.
Yeah, what was the Scots word of the day today? I've not seen it today.
Today it was painch, and I'm trying to go through a lot of Burns poems and pick words that people hear every year and don't know what they mean, so yeah, it was painch. Do
you have any specific Burns, poems or songs or verses that you love?
Oh, so many. Like I used to compete every year, so it would be one a year I'd pick and learn, and there's so many that just they resonate differently when you're older, or they resonate differently when you're women, and it's nice to have such a wide repertoire to pick from.
Absolutely. Well, I tell you what, if you get the opportunity, go back and check out this live stream and watch Tam Dean Burns' version of Twa Dugs with bits of Iggy Pop and the Stooges in there as well. You'll love that. That's definitely something new. You're going to do us a poem as well, which is a kind of like a dedication to Burns. Is that right?
Yeah, so I took inspiration from one I think everyone will, which is Address to the Haggis, and I reworked it to, instead of being about haggis, being about the Scots language. So it's called Address to the Lead.
Okay, well, if you'd like to, in the lay-by, in the car, go for it. Let rip.
Fair fa your honest sonsie face, what hinks o' Scots is a disgrace, a lead that's meant for lesser hings, no there to learn. A lead well kent by mony folk that does nae harm. A hint keyboards a wee troll hides, abin your soul the hatred bides, your words are naught but draps o' rain agin my heed. Tax mair than dubs off filled wi' pish to drown me deed. We ken the rot your soul contains, one single lead ahin your brains. I look upon you filled with shame, but dinna fash. The Scots lead mons drive on in spite o' all your snash. Then, word for word, Scots will nae dee, my time and tongue o' I can gie, and gie it all I will until my final breath. Our poems will be said by bairns, lang past were death. Is there that troll wha sneers in shame, or cries me mony a hateful name, or seeks to cause me muckle pain for what I do? Looks down with sneer and scorn for view on what I say. Poor deal, same ower his screen, his grammar neat, his English clean, he fechts for country and for queen, but doesnae see. If abdy's gonna look my way, it isnae me. But mark the chiels wha speak the lead, wha kens it's living never deed, and kens it's fit for all the time, no special days, and sees the poor wee hypocrites on 25ths and Hogmanay's. Ye powers, war way me every hour, gie me smedham ye cannae smoor, old Scotland wants nae linguophobes wi' a hateful heed. But, if you wish it grateful prayer, follow my lead.
Ah, fantastic. Thank you so much, Len Penny. I tell you what, you're in a car, you're in a lay-by, you can't have a dram, I understand, but have one when you finally get home tonight. And thank you so much for being part of the Big Burns Bash. You're a force of nature, you're a great, great human being, so thank you. Cheers.
Thanks for having me.
Oh, no, it's a pleasure. Len Penny. Right, we're going to go over to one last international branch. Now, the United States obviously are in love with Burns. Have you seen When Harry Met Sally? Of course you have. Well, we're going to go over to our American branch and join Jenna Ellie for a little film.
Thanks, Vic, and welcome to the US. On January 25th, it is a day of celebration as we celebrate the National Bard of Scotland and the impact that his poetry has had on us as a country. It is also a day that we get to celebrate the incredibly beautiful spirit known as Scotch whiskey. So I thought that a perfect dram to raise to the National Bard would be an oily and coastal, which is a flavor profile that is near and dear to my heart. But I thought that fragrance clings to the hand that gives flowers was a perfect dram for that, because not only is it poetic on paper, but it is also poetic in the glass. So we send a very big cheers from America, and here's to Robbie Burns.
Jenna Ellie from the American branch of the Scotch Malt Whisky Society joining us for the Big Burns Bash. Do you know what? The programme is drawing to a close. We've had so much good stuff. We still have some more music. And, well, as I said earlier on, there are members' rooms in Glasgow and London and 2 in Edinburgh. And anyone that has been to the Vaults in Leith, which happens to be my local, ladies and gentlemen, you will hopefully have come across our last musical act, Sam Gillespie and SIANNIE Moodie, who have been, I suppose, lightening up our lives and our lockdowns with their lockdown sessions in the Vaults in Leith. They join me right now. Sam, SIANNIE, lovely to see you and hear you in a second. How are you?
Yeah, good, thanks. Great to be here.
Good. Where are you joining us from?
We're actually joining you from the same place we joined from last year, a cottage in near Leithen in the Borders.
Oh, right. Lovely part of the world. Absolutely. Well, you're going to play us 3 tracks, I believe. What are you going to play us? Yeah. What are you going to play us? Are they all Burns related?
Yeah, so they're all going to be Burns songs tonight. And we're gonna kick off with a sort of jolly, like bacchanalian one that we thought would be kind of nice for Burns Night. It's called Willie Brewed a Peck of Malt. I don't know if you know it, but I believe it celebrates an occasion that a friend of Robbie's brewed up a big barrel of homebrew, and him and a pal went round and they had a bit of a session.
Sounds perfect. It's the perfect way to end our Big Burns Bash. So we've got some harp, we've got some guitar and some vocals. Sam Gillespie and SIANNIE Moodie, take it away.
Thank you so much. Okay, you ready?
Yeah.
Cheers.
Oh, Willie brewed a peck of malt and Robin Allen.
I was just looking for you.
We blight the hearts that the long night you would
do an extra big one.
But we have foo and all that foo, but just a droppy in the lee. The cock may crow, the day may dawn, and I will taste the barley. Here are we met, three merry boys at Rowaway. It's many a night we've merry been, and many more we hope to be. We are near foo and all that foo, but just a droppy in the The cock may crow, the day may dawn, but I will taste the barley. The moon I can her horn blinking in the lift sea. She shines so bright a while the same, but by my sooth she'll wait away. We are nae foo and all that foo, but just a droppy in the ree. The cock may crow, the day may dawn, and I will taste the barley. First to rise and gang a war, cook old coward lunacy. But first beside his chair shall fall, he is the king among us. For we are nae foo and all that foo, but just a droppy in the ree. The cock may crow, the day may dawn, and I will taste the barley. Oh, Willie brewed a peck of malt and Robin Allen come to see. Three blithe hearts that lee long night you wouldn't find in Christmas. For we are nae foo and all that foo, but just a droppy in the ree. The cock may crow, the day may dawn, and I will taste the barley. For we are nae foo and all that foo, but just a droppy in the ree. The cock may crow, the day may dawn, and I will taste the barley bread.
Man, that's such a great, just a friend song as well as drinking song.
Yeah, totally.
It does really give me vibes from the Vaults. We're often at the Vaults down in Leith on Tuesday nights, and indeed we were just there this Tuesday for actual Burns night. Had a lot of haggis. No whiskey, actually. We were very good.
The dry Burns night it was, yeah, promised it.
What am I saying?
So yeah, we're gonna continue with a song known as Now Westland Winds, and it's a beautiful song. Burns wrote it pretty young in his early in his life, and I suppose it's of that kind of in a way of that like romantic age. It's expressing this really intimate relationship with nature and like connecting that with his sort of love for his beloved, but also expressing this kind of sympathy with with the animals who are being kind of hunted by humanity, who's sort of going out there and shooting them. So it's a really lovely song, and Dick Gaughan did a great version. So we'll sing this one. and slaughtering guns bring autumn's pleasant weather. The moorcock springs on whirring wings among the blooming heather. Now waving grain wild o'er the plain delights the weary farmer. The moon shines bright as I rove at night to muse upon my charmer. Partridge loves the fruitful fell, the plover loves the mountain, the woodcock haunts the lonely dell, the soaring hen the fountain. Through lofty groves the pushat roves, path of man to Siannie. Hazel bush o'erhangs the thrush, the spreading thorn the linnet. Thus every kind their pleasure find, the savage and the tender. Some social join in leagues combined, some solitary wander. Vaunt away the cruel sway, tyrannic man's dominion, the sportsman's joy, the murdering cry, the fluttering glory pinion. Peggy dear, the evening's clear, thick flies the skimming swallow. The sky is blue, the fields in view, all fading green and yellow. But let us stray our gladsome way, view the charms of nature, waving on the fruited thorn, and every happy creature will gently walk and sweetly talk till the silent moon shines clearly. I'll clasp thy waist and fondly press, I swear I love thee daily. Nocturnal showers to budding flowers, not autumn to the farmer. So dear can be as thou to me, my fair, my lovely charmer. The whistling winds and slaughtering guns bring autumn's pleasant weather. The murecock springs on whirring wing among the blooming heather. Waving grain wild on the plain delights the weary farmer. The moon shines bright as I rove at night, gaze upon my charmer. Well, thank you guys. We're going to do one more song for you tonight, and yeah, hopefully see some of you down the line in the very, very convivial and welcoming environment of the Leith Vaults venue of the Scotch Malt Whisky Society. So yeah, we're sort of feeling Burns' romantic vein tonight, much as we kicked off with a rowdy bacchanal. So we're gonna do My Love Is Like a Red, Red Rose, which you probably know, really nice love song. And Also, I think nice because it's got that kind of that sort of folk song quality to it. You know, he was a great, I guess, collector of folklore and folk poems and folk songs, as well as an amazing composer of new ones. And yeah, I think this is maybe using a kind of traditional form that he found on his wanderings. So I'll sing this one. My love is like a red, red rose. Thanks, guys. Thanks for listening.
Feel free to sing along at home.
Of course. Sláinte. My love is like a red, red rose that's newly sprung in June. My love is like a melody that's sweetly played in tune. As fair art thou, my bonny lass, so deep in love am I, and I will love thee still, my dear, till all the seas can dry, till all the seas can dry, my love, and rocks melt with the sun. And I will love thee still, my dear, while sands of life shall run. Now fare thee weel, my only love, fare thee weel a while, and I will come again, my love, though 'twere 10,000 miles. Like a red, red rose that's newly sprung in June. My love is like a melody that's sweetly played in tune. As fair art thou, my bonny lass, so deep in love am I, and I will love thee still, my dear, till all the seas can dry, till all the seas can dry, my love, and rocks melt with the sun. And I will love thee still, my dear, while sands of time shall run. Now fare thee weel, my only love, fare thee weel a while, and I will come again, my love, though 'twere 10,000 miles.
Absolutely wonderful, and the perfect way to bring our... In fact, everyone's clapping in the studio here. Come on, yes! Sam Gillespie and SIANNIE Moodie, and by the way, I should say, it's not a harp, it's a clarsach. I'm sorry about that. I should have said that right at the beginning. My error. You were wonderful. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. And yeah, look, have a great rest of the year. And I suppose it's dry January, but next time you're in the vaults, I will see you for one of these for a wee dram.
Yeah, can't wait. Yeah,
sounding
I
fantastic.
won't be drinking non-alcoholic beer next time.
Oh well, yeah, well.
Real thing.
And I'm really enjoying your Burns plate, behind you.
Yeah,
as well.
I meant to say, yeah.
Well positioned. Well
On
positioned.
display. The man himself.
As my mum calls it, immortal memorabilia.
Ah, perfect. Yes. Lovely to see you. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah,
that is
thanks very
it
much, guys.
from the Big
Cheers.
Burns Bash. We've gone all around the world. It's been a wonderful evening. I hope you've enjoyed yourselves. Thank you so much for joining us. Tell your friends. You can watch it again on Catch Up. Thank you to all the participants and performers. I'm going to go through them. Well, first and foremost, our international branches. Thank you, and big shout out to all of you. China, Australia, Canada, America, Japan. Phenomenal. Absolutely brilliant to have them all in the house tonight. We've also got a big shout out to Donald Livingstone and Kerry Simpson on the Isle of Skye, who opened up proceedings. Thanks to them. Tam Dean Byrne, who's here in the studio having a dram or two in Glasgow. Jane Brown and all of the team at the Globe Inn in Dumfries. Society Ambassador John McShane and the London Members Room, of course. Stina Tweeddale, a.k.a. HONEYBLOOD. Check her stuff out online. Sir Jeff Palmer, who was wonderful, a brilliant guest. NICKEISHIA Barnes, joining us from Jamaica. Superb as well. Len Pennie, bringing Scotch right up to the present day. And, of course, Sam and SIANNIE, who we've just seen and heard, sounding wonderful. I really hope you've enjoyed tonight. I've had an absolute ball presenting it. Remember to check out Unfiltered if you're a society member. It's our monthly magazine. You can find out all about Burns and whiskey in there. If you're not a member, what? Join immediately. SMWS.com is the place to find out all about single cask, single malt whiskies. I'm Vic Galloway. It's been a pleasure. Thank you for watching and listening and enjoying our diverse and eclectic celebration of Burns, our national poet. Until the next time, slange!